It's the HoopWise podcast from New England Basketball Journal, a comprehensive look at the basketball landscape in New England, tracking prospects, recruiting, college, and more, with your hosts, Steve Hewitt and Ethan Fuller.
Welcome back to another episode of the HoopWise podcast, part of New England Basketball Journal. I'm Ethan Fuller. I'm joined from afar by Steve Hewitt and also Matt Feld. We are all here to start some MIAA playoff preview discussion. We've been really excited for this for a while. I am really excited to hear these two kind of explain the boys' postseason race. It's very competitive in a lot of different divisions. We're going to go through all five and touch on a bunch of different topics, players to watch, teams we really like. It's, from my understanding, from when these two have talked, a very chaotic winter, and I'm really excited to see what they have to say. We're going to start. Steve Hewitt is joining us on Zoom. He is a little under the weather, but this is a good week. We're going to kind of clear out the sickness and then be ready for the stretch run of the tournament. So I'll throw it to you, Steve, first. How are you doing?
I'm doing okay. Playing a little bit hurt, but this is the biggest couple weeks of the season, so we're trying to push through. That explains why I'm afar from on Zoom today, but excited for my first MIAA tournament. I know Feld has some experience, a lot more experience than me doing this, but and you as well on the girls' side. But excited to dive into my first tournament, and obviously this week is more preliminary games and first round games, but we're going to dive into some of the storylines and top teams and some of the exciting potential matchups on the horizon. And it's going to be an exciting few weeks.
Sorry, Producer Dave jumping in here for a sec. Playing hurt, Steve. The people want to know. We talking hamstring? We talking broken clavicle? What do you got over there?
I don't know how much detail you want me to put it. How much detail you want?
This is his flu game.
Oh,
okay.
I was.
That says it.
I was on the toilet.
Okay, that's already more than we wanted. We get it, but we're glad you're here.
Good detail. And also joining us, I don't believe he's sick, is Matt Feld. You've probably seen him in some of our other brands before, but he covers basketball for the Boston Herald, has done an awesome job for many years. Feld, we call you Feld. How are you doing?
I'm good. I gotta say, the playing hurt joke is going to be the worst thing in this MIA tournament. So that's going to start.
It's only up from here, Feld.
That's right.
All up from here. That's correct. That's accurate.
The bar is set low. So yeah, let's get into this. We got a lot to cover, and I know you two have especially been excited about the Division I boys playoff race because it seems so wide open at the top. Worcester North, after these kind of dynastic runs they've had over the last couple of years, not really in the title contender picture again. So the field is pretty wide open. I'll kind of tee this up for either of you. Like, what do you think of this playoff race, and how many teams do you really think are in contention?
Yeah. Well, there's definitely going to be a new champion because Worcester North is not in the field unless I misread the bracket. They're not even in the tournament this year. So, yeah, it's wide open. I think I told Feld this last week when I saw him. We were at the Boston City League Championships together. I think maybe like 5 or 6 teams. I think it would be fair to say, and then there's a ton of teams just like that are just dangerous matchups for a lot of, like, my first takeaway when I looked at the bracket, and Feld, you could probably speak a little bit more to this, because I mean all these teams are good to a varying degree because it's a state tournament. But when I look at the bracket for like Franklin and even Attleboro, Newton North, like none of these teams really have like an easy road at all. Like some of these early potential first round games are I think they'll get, like, the Franklin and Newton North. I think they'll get through them, but like Franklin could play North Andover in the first round, and then there's a potential matchup between BR and Winchester. We've seen both those teams. Those are dangerous teams and really hot teams right now. Newton North could play Cambridge, French and Latin in the first round, and they're a 30 seed, but correct me if I'm wrong, it's probably not your typical 30 seed. They're 15-5, and I know they made a little bit of a run last year, so that there could be easier rounds of 32 games for Newton North there.
Mhm.
I don't know. It's definitely wide open compared to the last few years. I think Worcester North was sort of the prohibitive favorite, and everyone was kind of penciling them in to make the championship and win it with the talent that they had. But I could see any of Franklin, Newton North. Um, I'm We'll get into Attleboro. I'm a little iffy on Attleboro. Central Catholic, Lowell. I think those 4 or 5 are probably the favorites. But I don't know what you think, Feld.
Yeah, I mean, when you look at the statewide tournament when it came into play a couple of years ago, being able to get one of the top 4 seeds and get 3 home games is such a massive advantage. And certainly in years like this, where there is such a minimal talent discrepancy between the teams at the top and the teams at the middle, being able to play at home was even a further advantage. So, if you're talking about Franklin being the #1 seed, North Andover, New Bedford, 2 good teams, they're going to still at least have the luxury of playing at home in that round of 32 game. And they'll have the luxury of playing Bridgewater Raynham or Winchester at home as well if they're fortunate enough to advance to the quarterfinals. I think all told, one of the big things that all of the top contenders have is that they really necessarily throughout much of the year really haven't blown most of their competition away. They've dominated at the defensive end of the floor. They're physical. They play really good defense, particularly Franklin and Newton North. But by and large, we're not talking about teams that necessarily maybe have 3 or 4 explosive offensive weapons. They've been able to get by because they all have one superstar, Caden Sullivan at Franklin, Javi Lopez at Central Catholic, Tegan Swin at Newton North, the backcourt at Lowell, and they've played really good defense and they're really, really well coached, but they maybe don't have 4, 5, 6 scorers that other teams in the past have. And that's what makes most of these games throughout the tournament going to be so competitive is that most of these teams are not going to get to 75, 85, or even 90 points, which some of the top teams in the past have. These are teams that like to grind the game out in a lot of respects. They're winning games in the 50s, maybe the 60s. And when you do that and you play that style, you're certainly hard to score against. But if an opposing team does shoot the ball well, you also become vulnerable. So I think across the board, when you look at the bracket, you're talking about a handful of teams in that middle tier, whether it is New Bedford, whether it's Winchester, whether it's Arlington, Newton South, who played really good basketball for much of the year. And if they play really well on a certain night, they are more than capable of beating any of the teams at the top of the bracket as the tournament plays out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It seems like kind of like what you said, Feldon, when you are such a defensive oriented, like top tier, yes, there is the whole defense wins championships cliche, but I think it also does leave you kind of vulnerable to upsets when you can't really blow a game open early like that. So that's going to be really interesting to watch. And before, I know you two have different champion picks, and I do want to get into that. But before we do that, are there any kind of, I don't know if sleeper is even the right word considering how spread out this division is, but any lower kind of single digit seeds or maybe even high double digit seeds that you're watching as maybe kind of surprise breakthrough Final Four run? Doesn't even have to be a pick, but if you wouldn't be shocked to see it happen.
My pick would be Braintree in Division One. They played tremendous for much of the year, especially in the Comcast tournament or Board 27 tournament, whatever it's called.
I get confused by that too.
They played really well down the stretch. Bob Crook's one of the best coaches in Massachusetts, particularly in Eastern Massachusetts. They got to play at home. They're going to go play an Andover team in the second round that likes to play that first to 45, first to 50 rock fight. So Braintree is probably going to be in the game in some respects. And then potentially you're playing Newton North for a second or third time, 2 teams that have a lot of familiarity there. So if we're talking about a double-digit seed potentially making it to the Final Four, Braintree out of Division One would probably be my selection, even though I did not have the guts to pick it.
No, I that was very similar to a lot of my brackets. What about you, Steve?
I like, and I know Feld has thoughts on them, but I like BR. I think they don't have. Okay, I wanted to pick them to go farther, but I just don't love their draw. They got Methuen in the first round, which they'll win that game, but Methuen is a good team with some good seniors, and they're battle tested in the Merrimack Valley. That's a tough game, and then they would have to play probably Winchester as the 9, and then if they make it if chalk holds, I guess they would play Franklin for a spot in the Final Four. But BR comes in, one of the hottest teams in the state. They've won 12 of their last 13. I was at their game against Attleboro last week, which was absolutely insane. They were down 8 with about a minute 20 left, and somehow came back to force overtime. Their press really bothered Attleboro, I think, there at the end. And Case and Falk, who, as some of you know, some of our listeners probably may have seen, was on SportsCenter a few weeks ago for his crazy buzzer-beating putback against Catholic Memorial. He was the number 1 player on SportsCenter, and then a couple weeks later against Attleboro, gets a putback at the buzzer to force overtime, and then they kind of roll from there. They kind of give me like, it's probably overstating it, but kind of like Team of Destiny kind of vibes with the way they're like winning these games, and they're just a tough team. And I mentioned Case and Falk. They got his brother Deshaun Falk is a senior, and Noah Perry Lewis is a really dynamic point guard. I just think they're a team that no one really wants to face right now, given just the run they've been on and the teams they've been able to make. The teams that they've been able to beat. They're not in a conference, but Doug Allis, their head coach, is like, it's very important to him to schedule a really hard schedule. So they've played Lowell. They played against Bishop Hendricken, which is one of the better teams in Rhode Island. I'm probably going to say battle tested more than once on this show, but they've played some of the best competition that you can, and that's all sort of predicated on being ready for the state tournament for right now. So if I were to pick, I'm not going to, because I just think Franklin's probably just a touch too good, and they're going to have the benefit of being on their home floor. But BR is one of my favorite teams, I think, going into this tournament.
Yeah. Okay. And you've both kind of alluded to this star guard play with a lot of these top teams, Franklin and Newton North and Central Catholic and Lowell and more beyond that. When you have each been out at games, who's really kind of impressed you that you're excited to see in these big moment state tournament games? Steve,
you want to take that?
Yeah. I think I mean, the 3 best players in my opinion in the tournament are going back to, Caden Sullivan at Franklin, who's the Hockomock League MVP, Javi Lopez at Central Catholic, and Tegan Swinton Newton North. I think those 3 are sort of the more dynamic players that you're going to find in the bracket. But I think that there are other players on other teams that are just as good. Connor Houle at Attleboro is a really good guard, and under his dad, Mark, who's of course the head coach there, and has played really, really well this year in a lot of respects. And if Attleboro is going to go far, he's going to have to play well. I think if you look at Marshfield, I've been high on Marshfield for much of the season. They were the number 5 seed going into like early February. They lost one of their starters to a broken ankle. They lost 2 starters to the flu. They lost 3 straight games to close the season. So I think they could make a run, but they're going to be pretty hampered by the fact they're going to have to go play Newton North. But Jake Brilliant, their point guard, is a very good player. I think Josh Rue at Andover is probably the best shooter maybe just the best catch and shoot spot up 3-point shooter in the tournament across the board in every respect. And then James Dingman, the Arlington wing, is a really good player. So there are definitely really good individual players in the tournament. It might just be about which team is able to find their second and third players that can score at that level, which is usually what you need in the tournament, because most top opposing teams are good at taking the best player on the other team out of the game. And it'll be interesting to see which sort of secondhand players on some of these teams step up.
Yeah. It's funny, you didn't even mention Star Powell, Aparicio, or Jason Kamau at Lowell. probably the best backcourt in the state. I don't know if that's a hot take, but I think when you look at potential matchups, that quarterfinal between Central Catholic and Lowell is something that I think a lot of people want to see. That would be a rematch of, I forget what the date was, but in January I covered that game. Central Catholic was at home. They beat Lowell. I think they were down 10 in the first half and came back. And that's a matchup that I would love to see. And I think the winner of that the winner that would make the Final Four. So yeah, we'll see what happens. A lot has to go right, obviously, but I like their chances. I think Central Catholic would have to get by Brookline, and Lowell would have to get past Arlington, which are two very formidable teams with good backcourts themselves. But I like their chances to meet up again, and I do I do like the Catholic Memorial backcourt, Aiden Pyers and Shakari Jenkins, and I don't know if I'm ready to pull the trigger, but I kind of like them against Attleboro. I don't know, like I don't know. Do you think that's crazy, Phil? Do you think CM could be Attleboro?
Well, CM did
I
beat
know.
them by one earlier in the year in overtime. The game was at CM, was one of Attleboro's. It was either Attleboro's first or second loss. Uh, but this is a different stemming. But one thing I was going to mention is, as Steve mentioned, Catholic Memorial, is the domination by and large of public schools in the Division I bracket, which is very unusual. Central Catholic is a private school. They're in the Merrimack Valley Conference. But for the last handful of years, the Catholic Conference has dominated more or less the Division I bracket. Whether they've won or not, obviously totally different story. Worcester North, of course, won the last two. BC High won 3 years ago. Now, Malden Catholic is the favorite in Division II, but by and large, public schools have had more success against the Catholic Conference this year than I think any time in the last 15 years. I know going into the final season, if you took Malden Catholic out of the equation, Catholic Conference teams were 14-20 versus public school teams this year, which is well below.
That's a great stat. That's a really interesting stat. Dang.
Yeah, what they're at.
Okay, Phil, bringing the stats. Okay.
Yes, I know. Yeah, really loaded up and ready for bear here. But it is just fascinating to me because usually, Xaverian, like I said, was in the Final Four last year. BC High won the state championship 3 years ago. Catholic Memorial was the number 1 seed 2 years ago, even though they lost in the first round. They were upset by Winchester. So it's just very interesting to me that by and large, public schools are dominating the Division I field this year. Certainly not something that happens, regularly, especially in basketball.
Yeah. We know there's always the Catholics versus publics conversation. That's not a conversation we're going to have right now, but just interesting to think about.
I haven't heard that this winter. Where are they? Where are the people? Where are the people who yell about the Catholics versus publics? They're nowhere to be found.
Very interesting.
I was going to say, I think some of it maybe this year is some of the Catholic Conference teams are a little bit down compared to last year. I know CM lost a ton from last year's team, and they still brought back a few guys like Aiden, who made that Final Four run in Xaverian, and those other Catholic Conference teams aren't. They lost some guys from last year, right? So that probably has to do with it. But I don't know. The Attleboro game intrigues me for CM. I don't know. That Attleboro has kind of been iffy to me. I know I've only seen them a few times, and they've lost every game I've been to for them. Just some of their late game execution is sort of alarmed me, especially that BR game last week when they coughed up an 8-point lead with a minute left, basically. So, and I think CM kind of matches up well with them. I think their guards are better. I know Connor Hull is a little more experienced, but Aiden Pyers has the experience being in making that run last year in the state tournament as a starter, and obviously Jakari Jenkins, this would be his first kind of run in with the state tournament, but he's impressed throughout the year, and then they have some senior leadership too, kind of surrounding those two guys. So I wouldn't be shocked. I know Attleboro would be the home team, but I wouldn't be shocked to see him went in there, and obviously the coaching too kind of plays a factor. Dennis Tobin has been here a lot, and I don't know. That's an intrigue. That's one of the more intriguing potential matchups for me. So
yeah, let's get to. I want to get some time for each of you to defend your championship picks, because you pick differently. And even if you want to expand out to Final Four too, you can, because yours looked a little bit different too. We'll start with Feld. I believe, make sure I had this right. So you picked Lowell to win the championship. You had Franklin Newton North and then Springfield Central in your Final Four too. Talk about Lowell and why you like them, and then also if you want to add anything else about those other 4 teams that makes you confident. What do you think?
Yeah, absolutely. So when I did believe that picking the champion was about as hard as it could possibly be, especially again 3 years ago, BC High went undefeated. The last 2 years, Worcester North went undefeated in state. So you're talking about pretty much. I don't think they were no-brainer picks because the tournament's wide open. Worcester North could have easily lost last year. Springfield Central almost beat BC High 3 years ago. But I think it was fair to say that it was going to be hard to not pick one of those teams to win the whole thing. But I had Lowell coming into the year as the number 3 team in the state. I've been pretty high on them all year, even when they've probably been in more competitive games than maybe people expected. You're talking about 4-year guys in the backcourt, and I think this time of year, especially late in games, when team turns up the pressure on you when they're down or try to change the pace of the game, it's important to have really good ball handlers, and I think Lowell has that. I think playing Central Catholic in the round of 8 is a benefit for them. I don't think it's a detriment. Those teams are very familiar with each other. Central Catholic got the best of them in a game that Lowell had the opportunity to control in the second half and then kind of like get away from them in the fourth quarter. And then when I think you get to the Final Four, I think it's kind of everyone's. It's anyone's game. It's a jump ball for terrible puns. If I had to pick somebody else, Newton North was my second selection. Obviously, I had them in the final, and I almost picked them to win the whole thing because they've got a similar benefit in terms of having Tegan Swint and Nikki Spinelli, 2 veteran backcourt mates as well. But I just think Lowell's quick. I think they're really well coached. I think they're battle tested. I think they've played a really good schedule. Springfield Central was kind of the other difficult Final Four pick for me, but they're a tough place to go out there and play and win, and so I kind of have them in the round of 8 already. And then I know they're big, they're physical, they're strong, and I think that'll give them a pretty big leg up in whoever they play in the final 8. So for me, at the end of the day, Lowell was 3 things. Their backcourt, and sort of the fact that they've played in so many big games the last handful of years, particularly playing in the conference that they're in. They had a big win over Bridgewater Raynham this year. And then I just, Bobby McKelzek is one of the better coaches around, and has overseen the Lowell program when they've been at their best and when they've struggled as well. And so I just feel like this is their year. I was high on them at the start, and I am sticking with that.
Yeah, I like that. I like bringing it home. We've talked about this all winter long, Steve and I, but the Merrimack Valley Conference is just electric every single year at the top with these top like 4 or 5 teams. So then, Steve, go defend yours. It looks a little different from Feld's, and I think that's good. So talk about it.
Yeah, I don't know if I can see like that 4-5 game with Central Lowell. That obviously flipped in the last few weeks because Lowell was the 4 seed going into, I think, last week, and then they had that really bad loss at Andover, and obviously it's one game. They got blown out. I think it ended up being a 20-point game. They made a decent bit at a comeback in the fourth quarter, but Andover did a really good job of getting Zara Aparicio out of that game. Like he only scored 5 points. He didn't even play in the fourth quarter. I'm not really sure why he didn't play in the fourth, but I think maybe that's that could be a game plan that maybe Central looks at and sees it. Hey, if we can get Zara out of this game, who else can Jason Camo or Colin Christensen down low? Like they have a lot of weapons, but if you can take Zara out of the game, that really kind of levels the playing field. So, and I just have a hard time seeing kind of, and I mentioned that loss for Lowell kind of cost them a home court game for that potential quarterfinal game against Central. And Phil can speak more to this in terms of how much home court advantage matters, but I just, in terms of when I was picking my bracket, I just had a hard time picking Lowell to go into Central and winning that game. And Central's just really good. Obviously, I think they have one of the top 2 or 3 players in the state, and Javi Lopez, and they have a surrounding cast that includes some senior leaders and Antonio Lopez, what's it? Oh, Elias Yanoa, and they have a really good freshman in Elkin Pena who's come up big in some big moments. He had a buzzer beater to beat Andover a couple weeks ago, and I just really like Central's their makeup, and I know they pride themselves on defense, and they've won a lot of games based on that. And when they beat Lowell earlier this season, it was a lot on the defensive end and kind of coming back after being down so early. And so that's I like Lowell too. I had them, I think, number 2 in my preseason poll, if I remember correctly. But I just like Central a little more in that matchup, a quarterfinal matchup. And then when I look at champions, and it's really, like Feld said earlier, it's kind of like it could be any of these teams, to be honest. But I just really like Newton North and kind of their makeup again with Tegan Swin. I think he's the best player in the state. His backcourt, Nicky Spinelli is a great defender. He's made a ton of big plays. I've seen him a few times this season. It's not a particular like senior or like experienced team. I think they have 3 sophomore starters, but everyone kind of understands their role. And I know to rely on Tegan Swint maybe makes them a little vulnerable. I know that they rely a lot on him, and me and Ethan were at that game at Emmanuel at the Board 27 tournament last week when he scored like 25 points in the first half. I can't remember.
It was crazy in that first half. It was ridiculous. That was my first time watching it. Yeah.
So I guess they could run into some danger if a team kind of takes him out per se, and they don't have a ton of firepower maybe beyond him. But I just think they find a way. They haven't lost in state all season. They had that win at Central Catholic back in January. I just think everything is kind of lined up for them. And I think, again, everyone sort of understands their roles in that team, and they dig in defensively. They've been resilient. They've been down in some of these games and come back, and they're battle tested again. I keep throwing around that word, but Paul Connolly's a terrific coach, and I think this team is kind of ready to crown themselves a D1 champion this winter. I think it's just my gut feeling.
I like that. And I mean, I have going off a lot less in-game viewing experience than you two, but Tegan Swin is ridiculous what he can do on the floor. So definitely I'm excited to see him again in a tournament environment. Any more thoughts on Division One? We've given close to a half hour to Division One, so we do want to hit some of the other ones. But I know, again, we've talked about how exciting this division tournament is going to be. So any last thoughts from either of you?
I feel like I hit on everything I wanted to.
I did. Yes, I did. I already did my public school versus Catholic school 10-second rant. But the only thing I would say is that when I look at the field is I think that we talked a little bit about the Central Catholic Lowell aspect, but by and large, when you look at the field, one thing the statewide tournament presents is a lot of matchups that are going to give unfamiliarity to teams. In the old format, when you were locked in your section, you had a really good chance of playing someone that you've already played. This tournament really doesn't allow for that, and that gives usually a pretty big benefit, again, going back to earlier, of the home team, the home crowd, having played in your gym before, of course. You're going to get your league officials, which is 100% a benefit. I don't care what anyone says to me. It's undoubtedly a benefit. The only matchup, in my opinion, that it has no bearing on is the Central Catholic Lowell game, because you're both Merrimack Valley teams. You're going to get officials that you recognize. Lowell's played in their gym before. And so I would actually just disagree with Steve. That's, to me, like the home court advantage in that game probably matters less than any other, in my opinion, just because those two have played in each other's gyms before. But again, that's just my perspective.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
It's kind of interesting. I always, again, different podcast, not going to talk about power rankings that much, but I've always, kind of pumped up how well the seedings work out, especially in basketball. And that is kind of interesting that it might be a little bit less about the seedings and more that the seedings create the home court advantage that then makes the seedings look good, because that is just giving teams an advantage. So that is, I think, an interesting point to consider. And a lot of this is how important home court is. And when we're all at these games, seeing the environments, like, you can tell how just different the tournament is, and just the crowds that are there.
Are you serious about playing your sport in college? Do you need a flexible education that allows you to maintain your practice and competition schedules while also preparing you to succeed at the next level? You should check out the University of Nebraska High School. UNHS is accredited and offers more than 100 online courses, including NCAA-approved courses to protect your academic eligibility. Students could earn a UNHS diploma or take a single course for transfer credit. Courses are college prep, self-paced, and available 24/7, 365. Enroll anytime and take up to a year to complete a course. Visit highschool.nebraska.edu today.
Hi, I'm Jamie Marcoux, AVP for Athletics at LaSalle University. We're proud to offer 15 NCAA Division III varsity sports teams. And last year, all of our varsity teams advanced to the conference playoffs. Our student athletes excel both on the field and in the classroom. LaSalle offers over 60 majors and minors and is located just 8 miles from Boston. With one of the most affordable private educations and housing ranked #1 in Massachusetts by niche, we're committed to providing an exceptional college experience. Visit laselle.edu to learn more.
Division II, very different picture versus Division I, and that is, does anyone stand a chance against Malden Catholic, who has just been great most of the season, if not all season? Matt Gaffney, one of the top players in MIAA. I know, Steve, you've written about him. I know, Feld, you've definitely seen them a good amount. First, before we get into challengers, what makes Malden Catholic so good in your opinion, other than, just saying that Matt Gaffney's great?
I mean, for me, it's yes, Matt Gaffney is good. But John Walsh is an outstanding coach. And when you coach at a school like Malden Catholic, that's had the success that they've had. Sometimes coaches like John don't get the credit that other coaches do because people assume he just wins because he's got talent. But he won 3 state championships at Danvers. He competed and contended with Central Catholic and is on the verge potentially of winning 4 in a row at MC. His kids play tremendously hard. They get after it regardless of who the opponent is. And I think it says a lot that they maintain their level of consistency regardless of who they're playing. It's easy for teams to get up in the playoffs or the state championship game or what have you. His teams play at the same level of effort and tenacity regardless of what the other team's uniform says. And that's a testament to him. His kids play incredibly unselfish for a team that has a ton of stars on it. And so that to me is what makes MC stand out. There are plenty of teams out there that have got good players, but the level of effort they put in every single game and the level of coaching they have is really what makes them so hard to beat.
Yeah. Yeah, I can attest to that. I was at one of their preseason practices this season, and just the intensity that they were going through for a practice in mid-December. You almost felt like they were getting ready for a state tournament game with just the intensity and just the standard that Walsh was kind of setting in that practice. And I think that has carried through the season. And they only have 1 loss, which is looking more and more like an aberration against that at CM. I think back in January. But yeah, they've kind of continued to roll. Matt Gaffney is the star of the show, and they've done this all. I don't think a lot of people realize, without Ben Howard, who was one of the best players in D2 last year. I think he averaged a double-double. He's going to play college football, I think, at Southern Connecticut, and he actually injured. I forget what the exact injury was during football season, and he hasn't even played this winter. So the fact that it's kind of like a next man up mentality, and they're just so deep and well-rounded. I know Colin Mankey has stepped up big, and Mamadou Kamara has been big. I think he won MVP of the Spartan Classic last week. So it's not just Matt Gaffney. Like I look at some of these box scores, and he's only scoring maybe 15, 20 points a game. It's not like he's taken over these games with like 30-point performances, which he has the capability to do. I think he's really kind of taken his game to the next level in terms of playmaking and reading the game. And obviously he has a ton of experience in big games, and been doing this for 4 years. He came off the bench as a freshman on that stack team 3 years ago. and just has a ton of experience. And it's just going to be hard to pick. And we're going to get into the challengers in D2, but it's just I feel like it's just too hard to kind of overtake them this season. I think they're going to end up doing it.
Yeah, no surprise. You both, I believe, are picking them to win it all for a fourth year in a row. And again, for all the reasons you've said, they're just so proven and so loaded. That's going to be really cool to just kind of see them make that run again. But challengers, as you mentioned, Mansfield is a 2 seed, Pope Francis 3 seed, Oliver Ames 4 seed, Whitman Hanson 5 seed, Somerset Berkeley is 6 seed, and both of you in the notes that Steve and I have talked about, and then Feld in your preview, have alluded to at least some combination of those 5. I know that's a lot, and we don't have to dive deep into all those teams, but pick out of those 5, like some teams that you like, some teams that you think, whether that's give Malden Catholic the most legitimate challenge or just kind of put together an exciting run outside of that. I'll give it back to you, Feld. Who do you like in that kind of next tier of challengers?
So badly, because I like to stir the pot, of course. I so badly wanted to pick Somerset Berkeley to win the championship, and I just couldn't do it. Because I think Somerset Berkeley is really good. First of all, they lost to Malden Catholic by 2 points in the Final Four last year. And in a 3-pointer at the buzzer to win the game. That obviously did not go in. They lost. But of that team, they brought they brought 9 players back, including all 5 of their starters. And all 5 of their starters this year are averaging 11 points or better. They are really good, and they're very high powered on offense. They've got the ability to score 80 to 90 points. They are an incredibly deceiving 6 seed. And if you ask any coach in Division II that's got a clue, John Walsh at MC, Mike Vaughn at Mansfield, Bob Rogers at Whitman Hanson, what have you, they all know how good Somerset Berkeley is. And that their 6 seed is kind of a factor of the league they play. No disrespect to their opponents, but they play a ton of league games, and they necessarily don't have that opportunity to go out and schedule at such a really high level. They're loaded in every respect, and they know they can play with Malden Catholic because they lost to them again by just 2 points in the Final Four last year. And so I expect that when the final game comes, MC's got the best player. They've got a great coach. That could easily be the deciding factor. But I think Somerset's really good. So that's my 2-minute Somerset Berkeley Blue Raider diatribe.
Love that.
Yes. Elsewhere, though, briefly in the bracket, I mean, I'm never going to not give Mansfield an opportunity to win. Mike Vaughn's got a 790 career winning percentage, which is absurd.
Yes.
Wow. And they've been in plenty of Final Fours and state championships. Oliver Ames won the Hockomock Davenport this year with a great year. And then the Patriot League's got 3 pretty good teams: Whitman Hanson, Plymouth South, North Quincy, teams that I don't see necessarily winning a state championship, and they might even have a tough time making the Final Four, but really good teams as well. So I like Somerset Berkeley the most out of any of those teams, but I think, like you said, Ethan, that second group, so to speak, has a lot of solid teams that in most years would be considered state championship contenders.
Yeah, I think that's exciting. How about you, Steve?
Yeah, I'm on board with Somerset Berkeley. They swept Bourne this year. I know maybe their schedule hasn't lended themselves to a higher seed, being at number 6, but those are 2 pretty good wins against Bourne, and Bourne's a Division 4 front runner and one of the best teams in the state. So that kind of shows how good Somerset is again. Obviously, they brought back so many pieces from last year's team, as Feld said, and I really like them. And if they play Malden Catholic again, it'll be in the championship game. So obviously, a lot of work for them to get back to see if they can unseat Malden Catholic. But yeah, Somerset Berkeley for sure. I like Oliver Ames. Justin Grimaldi's had a great year. Multiple 30-point games. Cole Craffey coming back from the one season at Bremer in May last year. He had actually started his career at Oliver Ames and went to Bremer and then came back. He's been solid. He's coming on strong lately. I think a few 20-point games recently. So Oliver Ames, sneaky. I was telling Ethan earlier, some of their games against some quality teams haven't had great results against maybe some quality teams, but they're definitely a dangerous 4. 8 seed Tewksbury.
Hmm.
They went 17-3. I think they beat Andover, if I'm not mistaken. Feld, can you?
Yes, they did.
Do you
Yeah,
remember?
they did.
They did, yeah. So that's a great win. And that's a potential matchup against Malden Catholic. Would be in the what round of
The quarterfinals, I think.
trying to
Yeah,
that would
it's
be a
1-8. Yeah,
quarterfinal. That's a tough quarterfinal
right.
for
That'd be
Malden
6
Catholic.
games.
Um, yeah, Tewksbury battle tested again. I think that's the 6th time I've said that on the show. But yeah, I think Malden Catholic takes this. One team that kind of intrigues me is North Quincy. They have a freshman duo of Aiden McGrath and Lucas Short that have being have had a great season this year, and their senior guard Kobe Wynn is averaging around 17 points a game. So they're a dangerous 10 in that bracket. So, but yeah, I think Mansfield, as Feld said, I don't know. I just see it. I think Somerset Berkeley is probably the greatest challenger to Malden Catholic, and a lot has to go right for them to get to the final to get to that point. But I think the safe pick is Malden Catholic four-peating, and which would become the first four-peat since the 2000 to 2003 Charlestown team, uh, more than 20 years ago.
Yeah.
So I think we're going to see some history this year.
And I believe, correct me either of you if I'm wrong, that if John Walsh wins this, he would then be the all-time winningest boys or girls coach for state titles. I think that's right. I don't. You might need to fact check me on that. But
There's definitely no boys
Look that
coach
up.
in the 7 state championships. I can't speak to the girls side of things, even though I should be able to specifically on the history, but I know no boys coach has 7 state championships.
okay, I know he at least was told this last year that he and Clinton last year at Cathedral are tied, so they might be going back and forth again this year. But at least briefly, he could have the all-time lead. So yeah, that's Division 2. Again, we'll see if anyone.
If there's one state championship bracket that's got less drama than D2 boys, it's definitely D4 girls. I can 100%.
You may or may not be correct there. No, can't confirm or deny that one. So yeah, D2 boys, as we said, a lot of great matchups up until Malden Catholic, and we'll see if anyone has anything for the Lancers. Now moving down to Division 3, where up until very recently there were 2 undefeated teams. St. Mary's just went down, but they're still the number 1 seed. Norwell is undefeated, and a couple of good teams after that. I'm again a little biased because I haven't watched a whole lot, but I did see Matt Breen in the college showcase over the summer, so I really like him, and I really like Shawshene Tech as a result. But you two know a lot more than me. Let's start with Division 3 and those top 2 teams that have been on really great runs almost all season. I think you two went opposite directions between those two. So Steve, I'll let you go first with St. Mary's.
Yeah, St. Mary's, 21-1 record. They're going into the tournament with their first loss. They just lost last week to Lynn Tech. I think they're the favorite for me. JJ Martinez is probably the best player in this bracket, I would say. Their junior guard. He's been terrific this year. Jake Fortier, their freshman guard, one of their freshman guards, has been awesome this year. Multiple 30-point games as well. Admittedly, I haven't seen as much D3 as I would have liked this winter, but I've had St. Mary's in my top 10 pretty much the entire way, up until last week when they lost to Lynn Tech. But I really like St. Mary's, and I think they're the odds-on favorite here. We talk about Norwell; they're 20-0 entering the tournament. All but 2 wins were by double digits. Obviously, kind of maybe more of a weaker schedule in the conference they're in, but 20-0 is 20-0. And then number 3 seed is Newburyport. I think they could potentially be a danger to a St. Mary's. They just had a head-to-head matchup against St. Mary's 2 weeks ago where they lost by 2 at the buzzer on a JJ Martinez buzzer beater. So if St. Mary's is the favorite, but I can see Norwell or Newburyport right in that mix. I don't know what. I think Feld had Norwell winning this bracket, but
Yeah.
I'll I'll let him kind of make the case for Norwell here.
I don't root for teams genuinely, but I was really hoping that St. Mary's would go undefeated to the state finals because there has not been a boys undefeated state championship game since 2004. And
Oh wow,
yes,
Feld's bringing the stats today.
that is that is off the table. Yes, Walpole and Groton Dunstable, 2004 boys state championship game. Last time two boys teams met in the finals, both undefeated. We will have to wait another year. Because of course St. Mary's lost at the end of the season to Lynn Tech. But Norwell went undefeated, obviously, as Steve already mentioned. Did not play, definitely did not have the non-league test that St. Mary's did. They do have three really good guards. Ronan Coffey, Nick Adams, Will Bostrom, John Willis, who's an NBCA Hall of Fame coach, trying to win his first state championship. But I'm actually more interested in the quadrant of St. Mary's bracket. We all know St. Mary's is really good. Dave Brown's been there before and won a lot. But the 8-9 seeds, Abington and Watertown. Abington gave Norwell a really good game. They lost in overtime on the road. Tyler Stayati and Kingston Maxwell for Abington are both juniors. They're both 1,000-point scorers. And then Watertown has Will Carty, who is a 6'9", 6'10" center who's averaging close to 25 points a game. So like two really good teams that could potentially play St. Mary's in the round of 8. I think anyone who's been in the St. Mary's gym knows that you want to talk about home court advantage. It certainly is one of the bigger ones and better ones out there. And so that would be a tough task for either of those two teams. But I think St. Mary's has a tougher road to get to the Final Four than Norwell does. Although I will say Hanover, who's coming into the year, had pretty high expectations and hasn't necessarily played at their level that maybe they thought they were going to, can be a dangerous 10 seed. Tyler Vincent's a really good guard. Gabe Munchler's a good kind of a combo guard, small forward, what have you. So they've got some pieces as well. But I just think I like the Abington Watertown crew in the St. Mary's bracket. I still think St. Mary's sneaks through, gets to the Final Four, and gets to the championship game. But I think they've got a tougher road than Norwell does to get there.
Interesting. I think it's so tough. Again, we've already talked about this a lot, but with home court advantage and stuff, I feel like there are so many times where we are mentally thinking, oh, we're 90% of the way there to pulling the trigger on some of these upset picks. And it just is tough with the home court. And like you said, St. Mary's especially, home court is huge for them. Their gym is unique and tough to play in. I think from the girls' side, I think I've probably watched double-digit games in that gym, and I think they've lost maybe twice in the many years I've covered. So it's tough. But yes, St. Mary's very talented too. It looks like there are a couple South Shore League teams that you alluded to that are at least going to be interesting to watch in Division III. Any other kind of general thoughts on the division, other players that you're interested in, or we can kind of keep this moving to Division IV too?
These are the brackets where I get very excited about the travel because some of these road trips are outrageous.
Correct.
You really don't get them at the higher divisions outside of some team going up Springfield Central or whatever. That's not as exciting. But some of these trips are outrageous. That's really what I get excited about when you get to like Division 3, 4, and 5. I mean, the basketball is great, but the road trips are better. Old Rochester's got to go to Tantascwa, which is
Oh my gosh.
like 6 hours round trip. I mean, that's just beyond preposterous. And then anytime that you're like talking about a Cape League team, I'm all in. Falmouth has to go to Greater Lowell Tech. Good luck with that. You're going over the bridge. You're going to the city. You're going to have to leave like 3 days prior. I could talk for 4 hours about some of these road trips. And God forbid, you always want to find out who Martha's Vineyard is playing because that poor opponent.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I look
weekend vacation.
Yes.
Yeah. I look every year. I don't think Nantucket or Martha's Vineyard are in the girls bracket this year, but man, that is the ultimate. Like, it doesn't get any better / worse than that. Yeah, those games are crazy.
Felt are you making any of those trips?
No. I went to Northampton last year, and that was plenty.
Ooh.
Okay.
Why did you go to Northampton?
Northampton girls basketball team, very good last year. I think I don't think they're quite as high on the seed list this year, but I think they were the 6 or 5 seed last year.
Yeah, they were I forget around that last year. I think they're a 9 seed this year, so still pretty good. That's a trip though. I usually.
I'm sorry. You went out there to cover a state tournament game, or?
Yes.
Okay. Who did they play? Was that like a big game?
If I remember correctly?
Okay. All right. Northampton is a good town. We're not going to get too off the tracks, but shout out Northampton.
Yeah,
it's a good
we
town.
all collectively try to be as efficient as we can with our drives, and that will never matter more than the next 3 weeks. So we'll see how our cars hold up. On to Division 4. Let me pull it up quickly. So we have at the top of this division, one sec, that was wrong one. So we got Holland/Burke. Many people know as Burke, but I'm trying to get in the habit of calling it Holland. Boys City League champions and top seed in Division 4. Always really strong program out of the inner city Boston. Bourne, we have alluded to briefly, and we'll get more into them. Really strong team down on the South Coast. Clinton is a 3 seed, Millbury 4 seed, Monument Mountain 5 seed. This is where we kind of start reeling in a lot of those Western Mass teams. And travel, as Feld alluded to, is going to really ramp up in these lower divisions. It seems like Holland and Bourne kind of have this top tier, but you can go either way, or maybe I believe Feld, you might have picked Clinton as a 3 seed to win it all. Yeah, you did. So actually, let's start there because I don't know a whole lot about Clinton. Feld, what makes you like them? And you can talk about other teams too if you want.
Sure. So again, I mean, I've been getting out of the bracket. I think starts with, and I know I was just joking or gimmicking about the travel, but when you're a Central or Western Mass team and you've got the opportunity to play home court in the tournament, I think it's incredibly valuable, maybe even more valuable than an Eastern Mass team, especially if you're able to draw a lot of those teams out there. Yeah. I actually saw Clinton play the Gales, if you're curious and keeping score at home. I went to their game against Millbury the other night. I went to the Clark Tournament Finals just to take it in. I wasn't working or anything like that, but the Clark Tournament's also always a really good take, and kind of the former Central Mass tournament that they've kept around now that the tournament's gone statewide. Millbury's very good as well. I had actually, truth be told, already submitted my picks before I'd watched that game, and potentially my picks would be different if I was doing it after the fact, because Millbury is a really, really good basketball team. Clinton's got 2 really good scorers and 2 really good shooters. They go about 7 or 8 deep. They have a pretty good press, and they've been there before. They were supposed to be one of the better teams in Division 4 last year. I think they were the 2 seed. They got upset in the second round by David Prouty, who they could rematch again with in the round of 16. I saw David Prouty in the smaller side of the Clark tournament win and beat Hopedale, who's one of the better Division 5 teams out there. And so I just went with Clinton for 2 reasons. Number one, the home court advantage. They'd only lost 1 game all year going into the other night, and it was on the road. So both of their losses have been away from home, which I think gives them a big edge. And also, I think defensively, they're one of the best teams around. They're holding teams to under 50 points a game. And I think when you get on the big court, when you get in the Final Four, that becomes a big factor. But I will say that when you look at really the top 5 teams, I would say from Holland Tech to Bourne to Millbury to Clinton to Monument Mountain's been there before. They've been in the Final Four, I think 2 times in the last 3 years. Holland Tech's got 3 really good guards. Bourne lost in the state final last year. While the bracket's very top heavy, you're talking about teams who have had experience at the top of the bracket the last few years. And so I picked them, but I actually find it to be, at least when it got down to it, it was as much as a toss up at the end as Division 1 was.
Yeah, that's interesting. And then Steve, I believe you picked Bourne. Yeah, just make sure.
I'm all aboard Bourne.
Yeah. Go for it.
No, you're right. Yeah, you're right. Yeah, it's actually funny. They're kind of coming in a little, not banged up, but they've lost 2 of their last 3 going into the tournament. But I still really like them. I think they have probably the best duo in Division 4 in forwards Mike Dankert and Nate Reynolds, who if you guys have been following my 5 stars of the week or just following their games in general, like some of their performances have just been absurd. Like talking about like 30 point, 20 rebounds, sort of double games. And as Feld alluded to, they lost in the state final last year to Wareham. Wareham, I think, is a 17 seed.
Yes.
This time around. They obviously lost a ton from that team. I think they won the last 2, right?
They
last two
did back to back,
championships.
including beating Bourne last year.
Yeah, so they went back to back, but they lost pretty much everybody from last year's team. I think Amari Rose is back, but they didn't really. I mean, so could maybe give Holland a little bit of a scare in the next round, but not too confident in them repeating, if you want to put it that way. But no, I just really like Bourne. It feels like they're on a mission this year, and I know they lost the 2 games to Somerset Berkeley, but I think both of those games are really close. Talk about Dankert and Reynolds, really good duo, and yeah, I just been high on Bourne pretty much all year. That they were in my top 10 in the preseason, and they did drop out after their first loss to Somerset. But I think I don't know if anyone can really match up with Reynolds and Dankert down low. I know if they end up playing Burke or Holland or whatever you want to call them, the kid Gerard Banks, who we saw last week, fell in the Boston City League Championship. He had a big game. I think it was like 20 and 15 or something. So he would need to match up with them. But no, I really like Bourne, and I think that would be actually another rematch from last year if they were to play Burke or Holland, and they played each other in the Final Four last year. So a lot of rematches, which I guess you can. I guess what happens when you get down to these maybe lower divisions of 3, 4, and 5, where it's kind of the same teams every year. But outside of them, 4 seed Millbury, Feld, I think you mentioned them. They lost in overtime to Wareham last year in the Final Four. So they're back. They could make a deep run for sure. And then don't sleep on Lynn Tech, 8 seed. I don't think they'll win it, but like they're dangerous. They just beat St. Mary's last week, and they handed St. Mary's their first loss, and they were in the round of 8 last season. So they could, as the 8 seed, they could certainly give Holland a scare and in that a round of 8 game. And but yeah, I just like Bourne and kind of the mission they're on, their senior duo, Dankert and Reynolds kind of carrying the way, and I think they'll get it done.
Yeah.
For Division 4.
Yeah, love it. I mean, yeah, with Lynn Tech beating St. Mary's on the road, as we just said, about as good of a statement entering as you can say. But like you mentioned too, a lot of these kind of perennial, I guess, Division 4 powers, or just teams that know how to reload pretty well, look like they'll be in contention again. And then, yeah, let's kind of wrap things up quickly with D5. You got Pioneer Valley Regional, enters the tournament undefeated, another rare, completely undefeated team. They're also the top seed. I know a lot of these are kind of outside of some coverage regions. We have a lot of city teams in here too. One question that I have for both of you, and please talk about whatever teams you'd like to, is I just want to cash the over on our using battle tested. A lot of these teams play, some of the weaker schedules, I guess, if you look by opponent rating on the power ratings. Then there's a team like English High, which is 13 and 10, but is a 5 seed. And City League, relative to a lot of these other conferences, is pretty tough. And they won and got to the City League final against some good teams. Generally, how do you weigh strength of schedule when you get down to these lower divisions? Does it really matter to you at all? And then kind of off of that, championship picks and who you're interested in. And I'll let Feld kind of go first.
I'll let Feld take on.
Yeah.
So the strength of schedule, I mean, that's interesting. I would say that strength of schedule certainly makes a pretty big difference, but I think one thing that you can obviously tell by looking at the D5 bracket is it's so central and Western Mass heavily dominated. And so even if you're English High, you're going to have to go on the road in the quarterfinals. Drury High School, which, by the way, for those of you who don't know, is in North Adams. That's not an easy ride by any stretch of the imagination. Just like when Burke, named Burke at the time, had to go to Monument Mountain 2 years ago with a really good team. They lost in kind of a crazy game in front of a packed house, but you're on the road, you're in a Western Mass school. It makes a big difference. And so I think it's really hard. You're one of these teams that, Fenway from also the City League is able to squeak through, get to the quarterfinals, and they're going out to Pioneer Valley Regional or Notre Dame Cristo Rey or Old Colony. None of those schools are close. And they are all going to require a substantial bus ride by every stretch of the imagination. Now, one team I think I've got my eye on a little bit is New Mission. They're the defending champion from last year. They played Hopedale last year late in the tournament. They could play them again in the quarterfinal if they both win 2 games. I think that would be an interesting ride. So Ethan, 100%. Like, I'm all in on the strength of schedule. It matters, but it also matters for the fact that these top four seeds have earned the opportunity to play these teams that are going to be having to make a heck of a drive to go out there and play them, honestly, more so than any other division. Although I guess the flip side of that is currently Palmer would have to go to English high school and again, talk about Jesus Christ, bring your lunch there. You're not going to be home for weeks.
Yeah. Yeah, man. And I guess that is kind of the flip side is, and it really applies, I guess, mostly to English, New Mission, and Fenway, is if you can get a higher seed and host even one or two of those games, that is really helpful for you. And that, like, the stakes are probably even higher for them down in Division 5 when, as you said, so many of these teams are from Central Mass, not West. And then, yeah, Steve, any kind of lasting thoughts on Division 5 that you have? I know we're really getting down into the weeds with some of these teams. But yeah, go for it.
This is definitely in the weeds. I'll be the first to admit I have not seen these D5 teams. I did see Boston English last week. That's a lie. Me and Feld were courtside for that one. Where Burke kind of pulled away there in the second half to win the City League championship. But it seems like Pioneer Valley is an easy favorite here, 20-0 regular season. They made the Final Four last year. They brought back Kurt Redeker, their lead scorers at about 20 points a game, and they just beat one of the higher seeds in the D5 tournament, which is John J. Duggan Academy. They're the 6th seed. They just won that game by 18 a few weeks ago. So it seems like all roads are kind of leading towards the Pioneer Valley, as I think they'll probably get it done and win this championship. But as Feld alluded to, New Mission, 7th seed, last year's defending champion. I think they lost a lot from that team, if I'm not mistaken. But it pays to have some coaching there, a coach that has kind of brought them to that point to lead them to a championship. So would never count out a defending champion, especially one as high of a seed as New Mission. So but as you said, with the travel, that I know they have that potential game against Hopedale, the number 2 seed, but yeah, Pioneer Valley, they're going to have the home court going through to the Final Four. Teams having to go out there. I like their chances to win it all. For D5.
All right. So yeah, that's Division 5, and we are right at an hour. So I'm going to do one. We're not going to have full court press this time because this episode's already running long enough. But I want to throw each of you one question. It'll be a little different for each of you. Steve, I'll let you go first. No, very, very basic. Since this is your first time really experiencing an entire state tournament, I want to know, outside of specific teams or players, what you're most excited to see. And Feld, for you, since you've done this for a while, what is your favorite part about kind of the aura of the state tournament beyond, again, specific teams and players and stuff like that? So whoever has an answer first can go first, but yeah.
I guess the first two that come to mind are just the environments that I'll be going into. And I've had a taste of it. I know Feld and I were both at the Arlington Winchester game this year, which was like probably the best environment for an MIAA game I've seen this season. And I know Feld's probably seen more games and more environments, but that was everyone there was telling me like how crazy that game was for Winchester. Doesn't normally have those kinds of games, so I'm looking forward to more games like that. And we talk about that Central Lowell game potentially, or we're kind of speaking that game into existence now, but I can only imagine that game, which would be at Central, what the environment would be like with a Merrimack Valley game and the winner moving on to the Final Four. I'm sure that's just going to be crazy. And then I'm looking forward to maybe some upsets. I know we've talked about the top 5 or 6 in D1 at least, and how it looks like all roads are leading for them to make the Final Four and make their deep runs. But I don't know, something tells me about D1 that there's going to be some crazy kind of upset, and I'm not sure what it is. I think I mentioned at the top of the show, North Andover kind of would scare me as a Franklin fan, just with the experience they brought back. Like, could they potentially pull off, which it would be a crazy upset, but could they pull that off? Like, I think there could be something in the works like that, and I'm looking forward to seeing I just think there's so many like dangerous teams as you go deeper in the bracket in D1 that I think one of those teams is going to catch a top seed by surprise on one night, and I'm just looking forward to seeing what that could be.
Yeah. All right, Feld, bring us home.
Yeah, the crowds this time of year are tremendous. Again, from a atmosphere and environment standpoint, I always root for matchups that would pit local teams against each other. I mean, I really don't wins, but I think those are obviously the best games to cover. If you get Wilmington, Plymouth South, you get Hanover, Norwell, you get the opportunity to have some of these teams, Abington, even Watertown, relatively speaking. If you get the chance to have some of these teams that play in the tournament that unfortunately you don't get anymore because there's no sectionals that are closer together, you get these tremendous environments in every respect. I would expect some sort of drama, but the only thing I'll say is that the power ratings have been, like, as Ethan alluded to, almost incredibly accurate, almost too accurate in predicting who the winners are. And my only theory of that is that no bleep, they're accurate. The best teams are at the top. They should be winning these games. They're home. They have their officials. They're the best teams around. That's why they've got the top seeds. I would hope they're winning. And that's all I really have to say about the theory. I don't find it like amazing. This God-given formula of ours has somehow saved us from basketball upset overlords. You're at the top of the bracket. You would be expected to win. Thank you very much. Yeah. That's all I have on that. The last thing I'll say is that this is kind of a random note. I've seen Millbury play a couple times the last couple of years, and I hope they make a run, only because I think they're like the best kept basketball secret on the boys' side in Massachusetts. Jim Donnelly, the coach, is outstanding. They lost to Wareham last year at the buzzer, and Jim Donnelly's son is probably the best spot-up three-point shooter I've seen all this year, and my favorite part is that his name is Jimmer. And so, which of course reminds everyone of Jimmer Fredette and his great run at BYU a handful of years ago. So that's just my twofold rant to end this thing. The power rankings, yes, of course, they're accurate because, of course, the best teams are at the top and the best teams are hopefully winning these games. And I hope Millbury makes a run because they are really fun to watch.
Yeah. All right. Those are two fantastic rants to end this. I appreciate you speaking on it. That's such a good way to wrap this up. So, yeah, for producer David Yass, thank you for accommodating our hybrid episode today. For Steve Hewitt and for guest Matt Feld, I'm Ethan Fuller. We will see you out on the courts, and good luck in your state tournament run.